Nah, so you know what? I don't even care what they're trying to allude. Nothing bad can ever happen to these characters. This is Dragon Ball, a nice, light-hearted show. So until then, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to subscribe and stay tuned in for my next reviews. Thank you. So, no joke, I actually started drinking tea because of Uncle Iroh. And for the record, I used to really despise tea. But I don't know, I just saw Uncle Iroh drinking it and making it and seeing him rave about it. So I decided to give it a shot, and I actually like it, so make it that of what you will. Nevertheless, I've had the recent pleasure of completing Avatar: The Last Airbender. For a show that aired on Nickelodeon, the series has extremely intelligent writing. Initially, I was under the impression the show would have been pandering due to the targeted demographic of the network. Thankfully, however, my suspicions were wrong. And one way this show proves this is by its characters. A general rule of thumb I have for great characters is A. Make them very relatable or connectable. B. Make them who others typically aspire themselves to be. Iroh falls into both categories, though, however, Zuko only falls into the former, at least until the very end. And for someone who is set up to be the villain, I'm even more impressed. That's something I can give a lot of credit towards the show, is how well the antagonists, aka the Fire Nation, are humanized. It sort of makes you want to believe that at least some of the soldiers are at least reasonable people that just want to make a simple living.
Can the new guy ask you veterans a few questions about the prison?
No, you can't date the female guards.
Trust me, you don't want to.
There is always a rhyme and reason why people commit even the most egregious crimes. Both Zuko and Iroh are no different. Zuko, like many of us, is eventually met with a cross path in life. His bitterness, his pride, it's all what drags him down. He's ashamed he cannot live up to his father's toxic expectations after being exiled. Zuko will go to any lengths in his reckless pursuit to catch the Avatar, putting his happiness or even his life on the line for the sake of someone else's approval. To go back to the way things were before, to be accepted back into his community. Remember that key word, accepted. I'm going to make a broad assumption. I'd argue most people lead quite sad lives. Actually, no, let me rephrase that. I'd argue most people don't live the life they desire, playing it safe not only due to fear, but to avoid rejection and ridicule from others. For example, I know a fair amount of individuals around my age, by the way I'm 21, who decided to go to school only to appease their parents. Going to college isn't the issue here, it's the fact that you've now enabled someone else to steer your ship. However, though, the opposite can happen, where people attempt to do extraordinary things, not for themselves, but with an underlining goal to impress society. The I'll show everyone, I'll prove everyone wrong mentality. It all stems from the need to feel important. And unfortunately, I'd say I personally fall into this category. Nevertheless, my point is that many people naturally feel the need to be accepted. It's just part of human nature. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. In Zuko's case, the issue relies on the fact that he's seeking external acceptance. And when he can't achieve this, he takes it out not only on himself, but the others around him. He externalizes his emotions through his anger and hate. And to pour salt in the wound, even when he ends up in his father's good graces again after helping defeat Aang, it's such a sour victory. And one thing I want to get across in this video is that conditional love is extremely hollow. It's all transactional. He's judged not on his character, but what you can provide for me. And in order to achieve this, he had to betray Iroh. Ironically, one of the few people who showed unconditional acceptance towards Zuko. Dare I say, Iroh was more of a real father than his actual one. Now, take this in consideration, your goal. You stress over it, And then when it's actually handed to you, you realize this entire time you were led on such a big lie. This goal wasn't for you, but it was for somebody else. It was catered around them. And that person didn't care about your well-being in the first place. And when this is all processed, you have nobody but to blame but yourself. There was no one else to point the finger at.
For so long I thought that if my dad accepted me, I'd be happy. I'm back home now. My dad talks to me. He even thinks I'm a hero. Everything should be perfect, right? I should be happy now. But I'm not. I'm angrier than ever and I don't know why.
Then who? Who are you angry at?
Answer the question, Zuko. Talk to us.
Come on, answer the question.
Come on, answer it.
I'm angry at myself!
I'd argue Zuko has the best character arc within the series. By the end of it, he's completely reformed, but it's in a realistic manner. Yeah, he loses his way constantly and makes mistakes as he's battling inner demons, but he's shedding his toxic family lineage. For his whole life, he's had to prove himself over his sister. Even at such a young age, he's had to battle over conditional love and attention from his father. A question that gets frequently brought up is whether it's too late to change. In other words, does your family or social class you're born in permanently define who you are? Now, on paper, the show's theme would suggest otherwise. No, you're a master of your own destiny. That certainly holds true for Zuko and Iroh, but however, Azula was doomed from the start. She was groomed by the Fire Lord to be the quote-unquote perfect child. And this cutthroat mentality is the only thing she knows well. There is such a huge, disturbing disconnect from normal society.
Together, you and I will be the strongest couple in the entire world. We will dominate the Earth!
Zuko mentions to his father that his exile was the best thing to happen to him. Unlike his sister, he traveled amongst common people outside of that bubble. He saw firsthand how others were suffering because of the war, because of the Fire Nation. I'd like to believe that this experience humbled him. However, this was not a privilege Azula had, or at the very least decided to indulge in. Here's a controversial take of mine. I tend to believe that most people, unfortunately, need to learn the hard way. A wake-up call of sorts. A point where you question, what am I doing? What the hell do I even do in this position? Zuko reached that point when he betrayed his uncle. In hindsight, it's an extremely humbling experience. In Iroh's case, this occurred as a result of his son's death in battle. In turn, he immediately stopped his 100-day siege and eventually was replaced as Fire Lord. Many would have sought revenge, however, he chose to make best of this horrible experience. Yes, he accepts his sadness. However, he doesn't allow it to drag him down into bitterness, but to instead humble him and enable him to appreciate humility, to learn from this lesson, and help others like his nephew not to make the same mistake he made that ultimately cost his son's life. And because of this horrible tragedy, I'd argue he appreciates Zuko a lot more. Unfortunately, this suffering is a necessary evil, and what solely matters is how you react and what actions you take from said events. And going back to Azula, as far as I'm concerned, she never had this wake-up call. That in turn would have enabled her to take accountability for her behavior. Maybe I'm looking a little bit too deep into this, and I'm sounding a little bit silly here, but this was really my thought process. I took a lot of comfort when watching these characters. It's extremely awe-inspiring stuff. Like Zuko, I personally struggle with self-acceptance, and I'm sure I'm not the only one out there with a similar issue. Seeing Iroh in action taught me you have to show yourself self-care before you can help anybody else out. Accept and move on from the negative thoughts. Seeking external validation just doesn't work, because you can't control what others think. It's just something you have to create for yourself. In short, don't solely rely on others for your happiness. Choose the life you want to live. And throughout all this, something that I've just gone back to is the idea humility is really the only way I can be happy.
Why can't I do it? Instead of lightning, it keeps exploding in my face. Like everything always does.
I was afraid this might happen. You will not be able to master lightning until you have dealt with the turmoil inside you.
What turmoil?
Zuko, you must let go of your feelings of shame if you want your anger to go away.
But I don't feel any shame at all. I'm as proud as ever.
Prince Zuko, pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame.